episode of Fueled by Craft. Appreciate you guys for watching, liking, and subscribing. This is going to be a really brief video focused on the Los Angeles Clippers and how I view their 2025 season, some questions I have, some predictions I have, and just my overall opinion on the team. I plan to drop a video like this for every team leading up into the season. Now preseason has already started. We're already getting some preseason action. Speaking of that, Dash Daniels is going to be a hell of an NBA player. Only 17 years old, but showed some really big flashes against the Pelicans. But like I said, this video is focused strictly on the Los Angeles Clippers. And the first thing with the Clippers is we got to just address the elephant in the room, get the jokes out the way now, call it an unction, an unk party. You know what I'm saying? The retirement team. But with the recent signings of the Golden State Warriors, the Clippers are now the second oldest team by average age in the league, with the Warriors, I think, being like 4 years older on an average age than the Los Angeles Clippers. But like I said, the elephant in the room is the age. How will this team hold up? Can they last 82 games, including the playoff run, which I think they're built for it. Now, obviously, you look on paper and you see a lot of 30-year-old guys playing basketball, which I don't think is a big of a deal as people are making it. At this point, I think it's more just something to troll, to make fun of. You know, it makes for good engagement, clickbait, and things like that. But this is a really deep team, which I think is the best way to combat being a little bit older of a team. Their first 11 to 12 guys are every night guys who can play every night on any team in the NBA, great rotation guys. And honestly, they might have about 6 to 7 starters on their team if we're just being honest. Now, they did lose Amir Coffey and Norman Powell, two big contributors to their team last year. They do get Bradley Beal, which I think essentially was you get rid of Norman Powell for Bradley Beal. I feel like that's an even swap. I prefer Bradley Beal, but to each his own. You also add John Collins, Brook Lopez, and you reunite with Chris Paul. So all those guys are starters in the NBA. From like an experience point, I don't feel like there's any team in the league more experienced or seasoned than the Los Angeles Clippers. Just to start off, to name the obvious guys, you got James Harden, who's going to the playoffs every year. Kawhi Leonard, Bradley Beal, Chris Paul, Brook Lopez, Nicholas Batum, even John Collins has seen some playoff games. Derrick Jones Jr. has seen a lot of playoff games. So they got a really good team, a really good batch of guys, and a lot of guys that are good at different things. This is one of the only teams that I feel like can have a strictly offensive lineup and a strictly defensive lineup. Two different lineups, but there isn't a drop-off as far as like productivity, if that makes sense. Just to start off with the backcourt, James Harden, Chris Paul, Brad Beal, and Chris Dunn, I think arguably make the best backcourt rotation in the league. Obviously, James Harden is going to be one of those starters, and if I had to guess, I think they will start James Harden and Bradley Beal to start the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go to a Chris Paul, James Harden starting lineup as we get closer to the end of the season, and just let James Harden focus strictly on buckets and letting Chris Paul, kind of quarterback the offense. Chris Paul was top 10 in assists in the league last year, so even though the age is up there, you might see a drop-off as far as points and maybe minutes played and things like that, but he's still dishing out the ball, still making great passes, still being a great quarterback, and he started every game last year, so health isn't a problem with him. And that's a great sign when you got a lot of older guys. Yeah, they're older, but they're playing, Kawhi Leonard, obviously, I think we expect him to miss some time. He looks healthy now, but we just know how that Kawhi story plays out. And I'm fine with it as long as he comes back ready for the playoffs and is just as productive as he was in last year's playoffs. I think they're easily in a conversation for best backcourt rotation in the league. If I had to vote, I would definitely give it to the Clippers. And even if you do have a Chris Paul, Chris Dunn backcourt, for your second unit, I still think that the ball gets moved around a lot. Having a guy like Chris Paul is super valuable. Chris Dunn is going to provide a lot of pressure on the perimeter, a lot of good defense. And Bradley Beal is surprisingly a really good defender. Ty Lue came out in the presser, I think it was Media Day, and they asked him about his expectations for Bradley Beal. And he basically said he expects Bradley Beal to be the great defender that he knows he can be. He mentioned that depending on the competition on the other side of the ball, that determines the effort you get out of Bradley Beal, which isn't a good thing, but it's great that he's able to notice that and, they can work on that. He said, the better the player is, the more that Bradley Beal is locked into the game. So that's good, but you don't want him taking nights off. You want to, the games that they're supposed to win, I think are important to win for a team like this who might be battling some health things with their age. Like I said, Bradley Beal, he was battling some back injuries last year in Phoenix the last couple years. But he was still 18 a game as the third option behind Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So I definitely think he still buckets. But I think the key with the Clippers and Bradley Beal is they're going to lean on his defense ability, his effort, because the offense is going to come. He's going to make shots, nearly a 40% three-point shooter last year. But if he can hone into that defensive role with Chris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard, and causing havoc on the perimeter, I think that's a really good recipe for success for the Los Angeles Clippers. My X factor for this team, though, has to be John Collins, a very underrated pickup, and honestly one of the better pickups of the offseason, if you ask me. He's around 18 points a game, so buckets is something you don't have to worry about. The most important thing I think he brings, though, is the firepower, the electricity, the energy that this team will need. When you pair him next to a guy like a 7-foot Zubac, who was one of the top candidates for Defensive Player of the Year, I think the Clippers got everything they need to win a championship. Now, how easy will it be? Not easy at all. Health will play a big factor into it. But if we're just looking on paper, are a top 5 team in the league. I mentioned Zubac and how he was a potential Defensive Player of the Year last year. And he could definitely still be that this year. He's a guy that I see improving every single year. A double-double every night. One of those type of guys that you can just expect a double-double from him every night. And I think adding a guy like John Collins next to him will only fire him up. John Collins can stretch the floor. He's a great rebounder. He was about 8 rebounds a game, so he allows them to have second chance points. And honestly can play that small ball 5 role if guys like Zubac need a rest. But another benefit for this Clippers team is they added Brook Lopez, another rim protector who can shoot the long ball, space the floor out. You're just adding depth. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, yeah, I'm naming guys who are up there in age, and John Collins might be the only guy that I named so far who's in his 20s. But the perfect way to combat being the older team is to have in depth. And I think the Clippers are honestly deep at almost every position. Now, this whole Kawhi money scandal and his uncle thing, hopefully this isn't a distraction for the team. They don't seem to be too worried about it, but I'm seeing a lot of articles and a lot of media things that are focusing more on that than the team and the impressive roster itself. So hopefully that's one of my concerns as far as distractions for the team. Hopefully they can get past that and just focus on hoops. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I keep mentioning age. And I'm only bringing that up multiple times because that's like the biggest red flag for the Los Angeles Clippers. Right after the All-Star break in March, as we get into the second half of the season, the Clippers play 18 games. And in that span of 18 days, they have 2 sets of 5 games in 7 days. Hopefully I said that right. But basically, that's a lot of basketball for a team that's older in age, which is something that no team really wants. But like I said, they're really deep at every position. That backcourt is fine. So hopefully they can get over that hump in March. I feel like that might be their biggest obstacle in the season outside of like age and health. But if they can get over that, I can definitely see the Clippers winning 55 games this year and being a top 4 to 5 seed in the West. Like I said, man, my favorite team, if you can't tell by the hoodie, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And leading up into that season, a lot of people I know personally, people are having conversations with, whether it be my friends or on Twitter, Reddit, whatever the case may be, is experience. People kept bringing up this word experience and how the lack of experience was the reason why the Thunder won't win. But it's kind of weird that now a team that has the most experience is now, nobody has faith in them. Nobody's believing in them. They're experienced and battle-tested at everything, whether that be offensively, defensively, winning championships. They have championship-caliber players on that team. Brook Lopez just won a championship not too long ago with the Milwaukee Bucks. So they've got everything, honestly, that you would want in a team. In a perfect world, I feel like every team would want to base their team around the Los Angeles Clippers as far as the formula that they've used from a collection of talent, offensively, defensively. Now, would you want them to be a little bit younger? Sure, but you can't have everything. I think Ty Lue will have these guys rolling. I do predict the Clippers to be a top 4 to 5 seed in the West. Let me know your opinions about the Los Angeles Clippers. Will they be the best team in LA? Will the Lakers still take that title? This is Fueled by Craft. Appreciate you guys for watching, man.